Hello and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Actually, I'm currently at Kanazawa Station in Kanazawa for the first time. I've never been to this city. I don't know much of its history, and I think it's going to be interesting to explore. Kanazawa is located on the west coast of Japan, and it's a historic port city that, believe it or not, once rivaled in influence Edo, which is Tokyo, and Kyoto at the time. So very impressive city with lots of history, and I think it's going to be interesting to explore. Okay, let's check it out. Wow, it's absolutely incredible. You can see the wooden arches as you come out of the station, and you're immediately met by this blend of traditional and modern that makes up most of the rest of what I would see on my journey in Kanazawa City. Exceptional. Beautiful. Let's go. So I just walked through this back alley, and I think it's the best way to explore. Sometimes these back alleys, you can find interesting things, interesting buildings, and you never know where it leads. I think I found another beautiful historic street. So I've made my way to a beautiful river running through the edge of the city, and I also passed by the literary museum of a very famous author, philosopher, who some of you may know of. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Suzuki Daisetsu, or better known as D.T. Suzuki, he was a prolific figure in the spread of Buddhism in the West. Not only that, but he was very skilled with language and helped to translate Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, and even Sanskrit literature. He was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1963. He was particularly interested in the formative centuries of Buddhist tradition in China, and a lot of his English writings concern themselves with translations and discussions of the Bian Nu, otherwise known as the Blue Cliff Record, which include the words, poetry, and philosophies of Chinese masters from that time. A lot of his work has been praised, widely read, and commented on. One of the most famous, and one that you may have heard of, is An Introduction to Zen Buddhism. Unfortunately for me, on this day the museum was closed. But for anybody visiting Kanazawa, I highly recommend taking time to try to visit the museum. And finally, I've arrived to the destination that I've been looking forward to, just on the periphery of the castle grounds. Just as is the case with Sendai and Aoba Castle, in many cities in Japan, you can often mark the lineage and the birth of the city's modernization to where the castle grounds stand. And they tend to stand above cities on high ground. And with that is a mix of history, familiar leaders. In this case, Kanazawa, which is now a part of Ishikawa Prefecture, was once a part of an ancient Kaga to kind of solidify rule at the time when rule was in Kyoto. They wanted to take control of Kaga as Buddhism was very prominent in Japan. It ended up being a enclave of Buddhist rule, and it was known actually as the Kingdom of Peasants, which is very interesting, and it remained this way kind of as its own kingdom for a long time. Another interesting fact is that Kanazawa gets its name from an old tale of a poor person, a peasant, who was digging, and originally just digging for I don't know exactly what he was digging for, but he ended up finding gold. And so the name Kanazawa literally means like a marsh or a land of gold. So another very interesting bit of history. And one prominent event that comes up time and time again was the Battle of Sekigahara. And this was a battle that changed the course of Japan's history, as I mentioned in the previous video. And at that time, Maeda came into rule as he overthrew this peasant kingdom. And the clan at the time decided to side with the Tokugawa. As we know from the previous video, the Tokugawa clan became one of the most powerful and prominent in Japan at the time, and thus allowed for the prosperous rule of Kanazawa as it grew and modernized. And you could imagine at that time maybe there would have been a miniature, very primitive version of this castle domain, and it would have been through those centuries and those decades that it was, reconstructed and created to be as strong and as beautiful as it is now. And in fact, it was so prosperous. There was a time where Kanazawa rivaled both Edo, which is Tokyo, and Kyoto. Rivaled it in prowess in the incoming population, which also rivaled some big European cities at the time, like Amsterdam. So it's very fascinating history. And eventually the population sort of stagnated, and now it's a secondary city as far as population is concerned in Japan. But still, what remains in the walls, what remains in the history, is that story of its prominence. And you wonder, just as before, what it could have been. What was before? Behind me, this very structure, how did it look at certain periods of time? Who walked through it? What historic figures? What meetings took place? What battles? It's very fascinating and interesting to think about. And one final fun fact or interesting bit of history, which I think is quite lucky for the city and quite lucky for us interested in history and discovering the secrets of these places, is along with Kyoto, Kanazawa was... Sorry, insect flew by me. Kanazawa was a place that evaded and wasn't destroyed by American bombing during World War II. So a lot of the history of different eras, different periods, different rule is still preserved. And so to conclude, I would certainly say it's worth a trip. It's a beautiful city, very friendly people. I've enjoyed my time, and it's been very fascinating to step foot on some of these historic landmarks and historic places that I've vaguely read about, and I would love to know more about and continue to try to understand Japan's history. So that's it for today. Signing off. Thank you so much for following me. Mata ne.
Yeah.
I just walked through the Nakamachi Samurai residence, and it's very interesting. As a Sendai resident, we have our own Nakamachi, and I can say, given the historical significance as well as just the beauty of this kind of samurai residence surrounded by rivers and very beautiful, interesting architecture that would have signified the wealth of that time. Not all Nagamachis are made the same. It's true. Our Sendai Nagamachi is an interesting, beautiful area of the city, but it's definitely different. So it's interesting to explore a different Nagamachi, a site that also plays a role into understanding Kanazawa's history. Yeah, really interesting.